Imagine this. You've just left a 28-year career to launch your coaching business. You've got 28 networking events scheduled in your first 30 days. You have speaking gigs lined up. Your marketing plan is solid. And then, within weeks, every single event gets canceled. Every speaking opportunity disappears. Your entire strategy evaporates overnight. Most people would panic. Some would give up. But my guest today, Paul Moehring, did something different. He asked himself, what can I do right now that I've been putting off? And he wrote a book during COVID that became the foundation for his thriving six-figure coaching practice. My name is AJ Riedel. This is Thriving Through, the podcast where each week I have real conversations with self-employed consultants and coaches about what it really takes to build a sustainable, profitable, and fulfilling coaching and consulting business. In today's episode, Paul shares his Get Squared framework, a goal-setting system that helps consultants avoid the burnout cycle that derails so many ambitious business plans. You'll discover why setting goals is just one area in just one area of your life actually sabotages your success. How Paul's Big Ten discovery questions help him achieve a 95% client success rate in discovery calls, and why the 24-hour rule might be the most important decision-making tool you're not using. If you're struggling with inconsistent income, feeling overwhelmed, or wondering how to build a consulting practice that doesn't require sacrificing your personal life, this conversation delivers exactly what you need. Let's dive in. Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Through podcast. Today, I'm delighted to have Paul Moehring as my guest. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I have a question that I ask every podcast guest. What was your path to self-employment?
That is a great question, and I'll try to keep it under 4 hours. A lot of things led me to where I was at. But what led me most recently, I started my coaching business in January of 2025. And prior to that, I had been in an industry for 28 years. And I thought to myself, is this it? Is this really where I should end up? And when I started doing soul searching to figure out who I was and where I wanted to be, I realized that I wanted to touch more people and have more of an impact on the world. Having that big thought of, I want to touch 1 million people with a positive message of hope for the future is where I've kind of designed things in my head. And so when I made the leap, I just finished a pretty good year in the industry I was in. It really didn't make a lot of sense to leave that and go, but I knew that if I kept waiting, it would just never happen. So long story short, I went and got certified to become a coach in 2013 and then waited till 2020 to make the leap. So that was 7 years. All I did during that time, continued to do my job, but then I also was using the tools with the business owners that I worked with to help them be more successful in their businesses. So it gave me a lot of experience and confidence to go through that 7-year process.
Got it. And then you jumped in full both feet in 20.
In
So it's
20,
been 5 years.
yes, exactly.
Okay. And when we talked earlier, you mentioned that you started January 2020 and you did a bunch of networking meetings in that first month. And then of course we all know what happened. COVID hit. How did you pivot when your primary marketing strategy disappeared overnight?
I did a ton of research, but it was quite humorous. I don't know how I can think it was humorous. It really is. It was painful, but somehow I found a way to laugh about it, which I guess is a good sign. Maybe it's a sign that you might be right on the edge of insane. That could be part of it as well. But I remember when I got going, I had an assistant that was working for me, and she had me in 28 networking events in the first 30 days. And I thought, well,
Oof.
if I keep doing this, I mean, I'll hone in on the ones that I really like, but this is going to be great. And then I also had 2 speaking gigs set up that I was going to go speak and share my story with. So all of a sudden, the networking events got started getting shut down. Some of them went to digital, Zoom kind of calls, but most of them shut down. And then my speaking gigs, I had 1 speaking gig that I did, and then the next one was scheduled, and that one got canceled. So I thought,
Oh,
what on earth am I going to do now? So I had business cards, so I was keeping in touch with people. And then all of a sudden I thought, well, what a perfect time to write a book. I had wanted to write a book for 10 years at least, probably longer than that. I'm the I'm not a real procrastinator, but telling these stories makes me think that I am. But the book could never get high enough on the priority list to spend the time to write it. So once COVID hit, all of the sudden, it, I had time to write the book. And I really enjoyed getting that out there. It was another marketing tool so I could get more speaking gigs as events started to open up. And it really gave me something to think about as taking positive steps forward, because when things went dead in the water, I thought, what did I do? What was I thinking making this move? Was I crazy? But somehow you just keep pedaling that bike and you keep moving down the road.
what's the name of the book?
The book is called Get Squared, and Goal Getting with Balance, and is the process that I use to help my business owners set goals. What would happen a lot of times is I would set an annual goal meeting with my business owners. I'd go out and visit with them. I discussed their goals, and some of them did a really great job on their goals, and they had these huge, high aspirations. And I thought, wow, this is great. If you even do 2/3 of this, you're going to have a wonderful year. Somehow I started to research on why those things didn't come into existence. And I found that oftentimes they would take those huge plans, kick them off for a couple of days, bury themselves in extra work, screw up their home life, and then they'd say, this plan was great, but I'm going to slide it in this drawer down here. And I found that out because I would call them sometimes just as an experience and say, hey, could you send me a copy of your goals again? For some reason, I forgot where I put mine. I must have lost them or trashed them. I just don't know. I really apologize. Can you send me another set? Now, I was fibbing, but I wanted to make the point of, do you know where your goals are? And oftentimes they wouldn't be able to find them. And so what I decided to do is they're getting out of balance. And anytime you're completely out of balance, it's hard to function. So what I decided to do is set goals in 4 categories of their lives instead of just one, being the business one, because I was selfish. I wanted their business result, but I also wanted them to do well as an individual, as I wanted them to do well outside of work. So I wanted all points of their lives to be enhanced by what they were doing. And so I had them set up goals in business, in family, in personal, and then in spiritual as well. And what I found is that if you've got those 4 quadrants going and you're setting goals in all of those, then you don't really get out of balance. Now, you might temporarily get out of balance if you're trying to hit a deadline or you've got a goal that's got to be done by the middle of next week. Sometimes you will get out of balance, but also sometimes you'll get out of balance with some of your home goals where you think, oh my goodness, I had set a personal goal to run marathon and I haven't started running yet. I mean, you got to put these things all in perspective and keep an eye on each one of those pieces. But that's the basis to writing that book. Was I found that my business owners were more successful. They trusted me more, which was interesting because I wasn't just talking about me and my goals. I was talking about them and their goals and having things work out well at home as well.
And if memory serves me, you're a best-selling author.
Yes, that is a best-selling book on Amazon.
How has being a best-selling author impacted your business, or has it?
It has, it's open doors. And what I find is that tons of people would like to write a book. And I remember going to one of my mentors, as far as book writing was concerned, was a person who had more insurance industry experience than I did. And I called him up and I said, I see you've got two, three, four books out there now. I'm thinking about writing a book. Is it just going to be a huge waste of time or something that I should do? And he said this, and I'll never forget it. He said, if you've got a book in you, don't leave it there. And I don't know what else he said during our conversation on the phone. It was about 20 minutes, but that's the only thing I needed to hear. If you got a book in you, get it out. So what I've noticed is that people will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh my goodness, it's so cool that you wrote a book. I've been thinking about writing a book and I just don't know if my information's good enough." And I'll just repeat that same thing. If you got a book in you, get it out. Because it does open doors. So many people would like to, but they can't. They automatically think you're somebody that you're not. Like, I'm not Stephen King. I'm not going to write 100 books and be a top author in the world. I'm not going to write a memoir that's going to just go to the top of the charts. But I am going to continue writing books because one of the strange things is yes, one book opens doors, but it's almost like that one hit wonder that sang a song that was just off the charts, number one on the charts, running half the year. And their second song never showed up in the top 40 ever. And they never sang another song. Once you get in and you write your book, when you're around authors, one of the questions, oh, I see you wrote a book. Yeah, I wrote a book. Are you working on your next one? Oh, well, yeah. It's almost like you're not a member of the author's community unless you've written multiple books. So I'm
Okay.
working on my second. And actually, I've got 5 outlines written. I just have to pick the one to really spend the time on to drive that home, and then I'll get that done and released. And I
Wow.
like the good news about it is it's a smaller book. I'm not going to write books that are going to be 300-400 pages. And the reason why I say that is that most of the people that I deal with from a coaching standpoint want a quick hit. They want to get some information and move on, not have this novel that they've got to snuggle up to next to the fireplace for the next 6 months just to get through it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. That's the kind of book I would write too.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you do differently, knowing what you know now?
Interesting question because I don't really make any mistakes. No, I say that tongue in cheek. I happen to think that whatever I do, if I've given it some thought, if it does work out or doesn't work out, I learn from that and I move on. If something doesn't, if I don't experience the failure, then it's not going to push me in the other direction. And I feel definitely that there's a higher power at work that's moving the chess pieces for me and helping me figure out how to align. The only thing differently that I would have done, looking back now, is getting into digital and Zoom networking more quickly because I think I sat with my head in the sand for a few months, not really knowing what to do, but still staying active. And if I would have discovered the digital networking sooner, I think that would have had a much stronger impact. I like to see people face to face, and
Mhm.
I love Zoom because you can it's better than talking on the phone because you can see the person's reactions and you can get to know them a little bit. In fact, when Zoom first started, I would see people and I'd think, did I meet this person before or did I meet them on Zoom? I couldn't remember. I couldn't tell the difference. You have 100 people and you're thinking, which ones did I meet in person? Which ones did I meet on Zoom? So it really helped out a lot, but I should have jumped into that more quickly.
Okay.
Mhm.
Tell me how you use your book for marketing, or do
So I
you
have,
use how do you use it?
yeah, I have it on my website. And then usually if people hire me to be a speaker, that's going to be the topic. That's usually the first the most popular speaking gig that I give is on that book. So I will use that as a piece and I'll mention to the organizers, I will say, listen, most of the clients that I deal with will buy one of these books for each one of their people. It's a great way to have a speech or a presentation become something. Because after the speech or presentation, they might go to dinner that evening and they might say, "Oh, that was a great presentation. Yeah, that was great." And if somebody was sitting at the table looking for feedback, really, give me the top 10 things that you got from that presentation today. And they're like, um,
Yeah. Yeah,
I
that
forget.
recall just isn't
The
there.
recall is there.
Yeah.
And Zig Ziglar was big. He said, I could give a million speeches and have this much impact. But if they take my stuff afterwards, that's where it really expands and explodes. And of course, back in his time, it was recorded cassette tapes in sets. That's where people got, they truly grew from what he spoke about. It wasn't from the live speaking. But the live speaking gets you credibility and then makes them think, I'd like to learn more about what this guy's talking about. I should grab one of his books.
So do you sell the books when you're giving speeches, or do you offer the event
I sell them.
organizers?
Yeah, I sell them at a discount to the event organizers. Yeah. And then it just becomes part of the speaking package.
Nice. I
Mhm.
like that. That's very nice.
Yeah.
You mentioned when we talked earlier in our pre-interview that you help clients get off the revenue roller coaster,
Mhm.
but you're honest about still being on the roller coaster yourself.
Mhm.
So, and this is near and dear to my heart because I'm still on the roller coaster too. How do you coach from that place of I'm figuring this out too?
Well, there's a couple of aspects that I see. First of all, just in general, I learn from people that are getting it done, and I also learn from people that are struggling. Because as I'm going out and coaching, I'm seeing things and I'll point them out, and then I'll recognize other things. I'll say, hey, you should be doing this part too, Paul. Why aren't you doing that? So I find it a huge learning opportunity. Anytime you're studying or working with anybody, they're doing things that are good that you want to follow, and then they're doing things that aren't so good that you don't want to follow, and you want to learn from that. I found that if somebody is just down the road for me, down the train tracks for me for a little while, and they've gone around a curve, and I can get them on the phone and say, hey, I know I've got this curve coming up. What speed do I want to take it at? I don't want to fly off the tracks. I don't want to come up short of the turn. Can you give me some info? And I found that to be very helpful. There's different coaches that you'll need at different levels, and the coaching piece of the process just never goes away. And I'm a big believer in the fact that life is like sports. Sorry, sports are like life in fast motion. I'm a huge believer in that. So I learn a lot from just watching a game and watching a coach that game and watching the players fall down, get back up again, and keep going forward. There's so much to learn about those types of things. But you might, let's say we're in football season, so I'll use that as an example. Let's say that you're the number one drafted wide receiver coming into the league, and you're getting advice from somebody that's right alongside with you, new draft pick, but you're the number one draft pick, and this person's number 30. Maybe they came in the year last year. So you can get some information from that person, but probably in the next 2, 3, 4 years, you're going to surpass that person and kind of put them in the dust, so to speak, because you're coming in with a set of talents that is going to continue to grow and grow from there. So I find it to be, I don't find that to be a drawback at all. But as far as the roller coaster that I'm talking about, there's techniques and things that you can do to build in more consistency. And right now I'm about 3/4 of the way through building some new pieces for my group coaching. So my group coaching would go at a year long pace instead of bringing a client on for 6 months. Maybe you brought four of them on at the same time. Those 6 monthers end at the same time, and now your revenue dry, and you got to pick it up again to get them building. That part of the roller coaster can be leveled out somewhat by having that group coaching. And what I found is the group coaching that I participate in is really kind of an extra special piece. You've got the coach that's going to be giving you some information and guiding discussions, but then you've got all these other people in the room that have their own experiences that you can learn from. I think it multiplies it, uh, you know, by probably tenfold what you get out of a group type of a coaching session than you do out of a one-on-one. What I find with my one-on-ones, they've got some particular situational issues that they're dealing with that they need help with. And that may not feel so great for them in a group. It may be opening themselves up too much. So they'll still opt for the one-on-one. But the group is what I'm really, really getting close to launching so I can get that going and smooth out some of those ups and downs.
Well, that's exciting.
Mhm.
You have a goal, a revenue goal. How are you tracking towards your revenue goal?
I'm behind, but it's pretty aggressive. I wanted to be at seven figures by now, and I'm not there. So I've got to keep going. And I feel like I'll get there. I know I'll get there because I'll just keep my foot on the gas pedal till I do, and things will come up that'll help me enhance that or speed it up. When you're working really, really hard, you get lucky. And so I don't count on luck, but it has never let me down that if you're working really, really, really hard and you're doing all of the things that you should be doing, a door will open that you just never anticipated.
Hmm.
And this podcast could be seen by somebody that really needs my help. And all of a sudden, oh my gosh, that was a podcast that we did. We botched the first schedule. I botched the first schedule. Somehow it didn't show up on my calendar correctly. I missed the meeting. Then we had our second meeting. It went well, but then, you just never know what it's going to be. So you got to keep working.
Yep, I agree. So when we were talking, you have kind of a contrarian view on the idea of a niche. Because the common wisdom, you said everyone tells you to niche down, but you kind of resist that. Why do you resist the idea of niching down?
Well, it's interesting. You can get opinions on anything at any time and follow it down a rabbit hole and get people that agree. Now, I'm not going to talk politics, but politics are probably the greatest example. You say that XYZ happened, and you can go search the internet and say, wow, XYZ happened. The other folks can say, no, it didn't happen. They can search the internet and find out, no, it didn't happen. But one of my
Mhm.
favorite coaches is a gentleman named Steve Chandler. I believe he still lives in the Scottsdale area. I've never met him in person. I've read several of his books, and he is an anti niche guy. He's anti niche. So he's the guy that I believe on the anti niche. There's probably been 50 people that have told me, oh no, you really need to niche down. You've got to really pick that. You got to really zone in on it. So, so I go with my one guy. Now, part of this is a personal preference and a challenge as well. I think that business is business is business. There's so many components of business that carry over from one business to the other business to the other business. And a lot of them involve team members and team motivation and team revenue and keeping team engaged. That does not change from industry to industry. So what I found is by not being too specific about who I go after, I get to learn new industries and new things all the time. And then I can go to that next car wash and say, you know what, I'm working with a couple of car washes down the street, and one of the things that they're doing is this seems to really be accelerating their growth. I didn't know anything about car washes before I met that first car wash owner that was open to letting me work with him as a coach. So that's my niche. Now, if you do have a niche, I wouldn't be afraid to go after it. The weird thing about me is that I mentioned that I was in the insurance industry. I felt to myself that it would be, now get this, it sounds silly. I thought it would be lazy for me to just go after insurance people because I wouldn't have to learn anything new. I knew the industry too
Hmm.
well. So I didn't go after insurance people. Now, some of them find me. I do coach some insurance people. They find me and I'm able to help them, but I'm not willing to just settle with doing insurance people. It's strange, but it seems to work. And again, the excitement, your passion for the kind of business and the kind of situation that you're working with, your passion for that as a coach shines through. And if it's boring and mundane to some extent, if you're doing all of that, if I was doing all insurance people all the time, I'm sure that I would say, I've been doing this too long. I want to let me get my wings out and check out some new territories here.
Interesting. As you're talking, I'm thinking, because I'm a big believer in a niche. And in fact, I spend the whole first month of the Revenue Accelerator program on niche definition, niche precision. And it strikes me that you can have different niches. But the reason I advocate for a niche is that you want to speak like we're speaking one-on-one. When you're using marketing messaging, you want to be able to make that person you're talking to feel like you understand them intimately. And like you said, a lot of there's so much commonality across businesses, but human nature, we tend to feel like we're unique or like you don't understand my industry. It doesn't work here, whatever that is. So, but it struck me that we're not at opposite ends. It's really, I see the importance of a niche for the purposes of doing marketing, but you can serve a lot more people. It just means that you might have different marketing campaigns.
Yes, and I would agree with you 100%. And I would continue to do what you're doing to get people in that specific zone because it does make sense. What I'll find some experienced coaches will do is they'll have this niche and then they'll have this one and they'll have this one and this one. And each one of them comes with with an additional set of marketing, targeting, everything else. And it's just not how you would start building four of those. You'd start
Yes,
with one
exactly.
and then going from there. What I found
Exactly.
with me is I thought that after I coached for a while, then all of a sudden I would be a magnet to these types of businesses. And that just hasn't happened. I keep getting them from multiple places and having great, great interactions and advancements with those people as I've gone along. So it's been very rewarding to watch them excel because it has to be one of their thoughts too. What did you do before? And how does that relate to my business? But
Yeah.
I do,
What makes you credible?
yeah, yeah. I do blame a little bit of that on the training that I went through to become a coach. I went through the E-Myth School of Coaching, and that book was written by Michael Gerber, and it talks to small and medium-sized business owners. And I'd gotten to see how their tools worked and how they can work from business to business to business, and that was very helpful.
You're the one when we had our pre-interview that told me about the E-Myth, and one of the things I love about doing a podcast is I get recommendations on books. So
Mhm.
that is a book. I can't say I've finished it because I probably have six different books that I'm reading at a time. Not good focus there, but that definitely is a book that I have picked up because of your recommendation.
Great. That's
I,
great.
I want to take you back for a moment to January 2020.
Mhm.
What would you tell, actually, today, knowing what you know, if you could time travel back to January 2020, what would you tell your January 2020 self about what this journey would really be like?
I would say quit trying to build the next Rocky movie. And that sounds like a strange thing, but what I wanted to do, first of all, when I was listening to coaches tell their stories, so many of them would talk about I started out and then things were hit towards the ground and then finally I figured something out and I pulled that plane up and now I'm at all these kind of crazy heights. And I thought to myself, I don't really have that story. I was doing well in my prior business, getting awards for what we did, getting recognized by the people that I worked with for doing a great job. Everything, a lot of the things were going well. And so I started thinking, well, I don't really have a story to tell like Sylvester Stallone because the real Sylvester Stallone story is quite amazing. He wrote Rocky. He went in to interview for or to try out for a part. And at the end of the interview, he said, "Hey, by the way, I might not be the right person for this part, but I've got, I wrote this movie and I wrote this manuscript. You want to take a look at it?" And they're like, "Yeah, all right, we'll take a look at it." And that was the start of it. But before that, he had spent a couple of nights at the bus station sleeping homelessly. He
Oh,
was married, took his wife's jewelry and pawned it off to make rent. I mean, this guy was not doing well. So I thought to myself, well, I want to have more of a Rocky Balboa type of a story. So I believe that I set myself up to be in a more challenging position, not picking the niche, going about it a different way. And it has made it more difficult for me to get through this. Now I'll have a pretty crazy story to tell when it all's done and wrapped up and I start hitting these goals that I want to be at before I start telling people this is exactly how you draw the map to seven figures. But that would be the thing that I would talk to myself about. And then the other piece is just looking at a Rocky Balboa. If he had a chance not to be in that situation, if Sylvester Stallone did not have to go through that, do you think he would have? Heck no. He would not have gone through that. So why would I be putting myself through it on purpose to be able to prove the point that I can climb out of such a terrifying situation as he did?
but we all have those terrifying situations that maybe are not on the same scale as his, but we all, we all have a story.
Absolutely.
So you've got that seven-figure goal. When you hit that goal, what is the first thing you're going to do differently in your business?
Since my goal is to touch 1 million people with a positive message of hope for the future, some of those people hope to be in business for themselves. They hope that they can run a business of that size. So I'd really like to say, okay, you've hit this mark. Now you really need to dial this up and go talk to other people how to hit this mark. Tell them what it takes to get that done and share your message with more people. Because the freedom of being your own business owner is great. There's ups and downs about it, no doubt, but it's great. One of the fears that we have as independent business owners is waking up, you're in a cold sweat and you're breathing fast and obviously something happened. You had a bad dream and maybe your spouse next to you says, what's wrong? What's the deal?
Hmm?
And I might say, oh, thank goodness. I had a dream that I had to go back and work for corporate America. you know, no, I enjoyed working in my position. It wasn't all that bad. But when you take that step and now you're working in corporate again, what you're saying to yourself is, I failed my dream. My dream didn't come true of being an independent, successful business owner. I didn't get to realize that dream.
Yeah, rather than going all in and assuming you're going to.
Yes. Mhm.
What's the best investment you've made in your business? And what was the biggest waste of money?
Yeah. Those fit into the same category because when I started, I thought, okay, I need some help. I need some training on marketing and getting more clients headed my way. So, what am I going to do? When you start trudging through programs, you'll get 20 to 30 to 50 programs deep, and you haven't quite hit the mark on the one that's going to really work for you. I think that's probably the toughest piece of the puzzle is trying to figure out which one's going to work and help. Now, you learn something from everyone that you touched, and they
Mhm.
become part of you. What would I be like if I didn't go to those 30 to 50 choices? I'd know a lot less right now. But it would have been nice to pick the right one first. That would make the road easier. That would make it more of a predictable success route that you were on. That's probably the biggest challenge is I'm not going to name the programs, right? But I can say that some have worked well and some of them haven't worked well. And you really have to dig in and dig deep and figure out what the guarantees are and use those guarantees and don't do the shiny object syndrome. So there's two rules that I have. First of all, I don't chase those shiny objects. And secondly,
Mhm.
I don't make a decision over the phone or on Zoom on the first call. I don't do it
Which
because
is hard because they're geared, they're trained to get you to want to say yes at that moment. Like you're going to get extra bonuses and you're going to get an extra discount and you're going to miss it if you don't make a decision immediately. It's really hard to stand firm and say, I want to think about this.
yeah, I'm particularly mindful of this because I remember one time I went to go up buy a car and I was at the dealership and they were pushing and I said, I should really go home and think about this. I think I want to just give me the night. I promise I'm going to come back tomorrow and I'll have decided what I want to do. But a lot of things work that way for me. I can sleep on it and the next day it's really really clear for me. So the guy just kept twisting my arm. And so I said, all right, I'll take this one. And I took the gold colored car, not gold, but kind of a soft gold colored car. No, the silver one. So I get the silver one home. I park it in my garage. I'm not all that sure. I'm having buyer's remorse already. And I just took the thing home and it was a brand new car. So I slept on it and I woke up in the morning and I went out and I looked at the car again. And this is a funny thing. This is just admitting how stupid we are as people and how silly little things can get us. So this car was the notch down from the car that I said no to, but it didn't have fog lights. It had spaces where the fog lights were on the upgraded version, but these were, they had a black cap of them. It looked very nice and fine. But I decided I don't like that. I want to have those fog lights on my car. So I went back in that next day and traded the car, and I'm sure it cost me more than it would have cost if I would have bought it the first time. And I can't tell you that I used those fog lights 5 times when I had, in the length of time that I had that car. It's just so silly. But again, waking up in the morning, I would have went down there and gotten that other car. It wouldn't have been for the fog lights, but it would be something that said, this one matches what I'm looking for better, and I'd feel better driving it. That's kind of the way that I make decisions. Now, the challenge is when you're selling your program, you're also looking for people that say, yes, I'm going to do this, and
Yes.
I'm going to jump on, and I'm going to go, I'm going to hit the gas full and just roll. My problem, and the reason why I wait overnight, is that I've seen too many programs and I get excited and then I think, but what about this and what about this and what about this? I might come up with some more questions. As soon as I've got my questions answered and I'm ready to go, then look out. Then gonna tear it up and everything's gonna go fine with that going forward.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a long answer.
I'm the same way as you. I will sleep on it because there have been numerous times when I have said yes and then woken up the next morning and said, "Oh, why did I say yes? Can I
Mhm.
get out of this?" That was not a wise thing to do. So it's a 24-hour rule is always good.
Yeah, I
As we
think.
start to wrap up, I have a couple final questions.
Mhm.
What book, podcast, or other resource has been most valuable in your journey so far?
When I started with the E-Myth, that really inspired me to go out and get my training certificate with them, which cost a decent chunk of money. I mean, I don't know, 20, 25 grand I spent to get eMyth certified to coach. I loved the book that they wrote and used some of the systems. It was a little bit long and drawn out for me from a training standpoint or from a coaching standpoint because they had about 125 different modules you could put somebody through. There was a book that came out just recently by Michael Michalowicz, and it's called Clockwork. And what I found with that book is that it turned the E-Myth on its head and compacted it at the same time.
Hmm.
So I started using those tools to manage my own time, and they really seem to help me out a bunch. And then you give me any book from a may have even passed away, but back in the old days, so to speak, when they wrote their book, some of those ideas, most of those ideas still work today. So I'll go back and listen to some of my Zig Ziglar material, and I'll look up some of these older pieces. Frank Bettger was one that I really liked. How I Raised Myself from Failure to Success in Selling. Dale Carnegie's got some great stuff. I'm missing a million of them, but there's a million of them out there, and their information, their advice is still strong and steady today. So I really like those types of books. I'll even go back as far as Ben Franklin and look
Mm.
at some of his material, because what he developed was kind of the starting point for the Franklin Covington Company and their organizational books that they would sell you. Um, they had the basis for it, right, built in there from Ben Franklin's research. So that's probably a longer list than you wanted, but it sums it up. I try to listen to at least 3 books a month. I do have an Audible account, so I can listen to them while I'm driving or working out. I don't have time to sit and read 3 books, so I've got to use the Audible method. And I
Yeah.
also listen to them at 2x speed.
Yeah.
I've gotten
Yeah.
accustomed to that, so it helps.
I listen at 1.5 because I read somewhere that we can retain as much at 1.5 as we can at 1x.
There you
So,
go.
yeah. And the last and most important question, where can listeners go to find out more about you and your business?
Probably best to start with the website, which is just spaulmoehring.com. And that has links on there with some basic information. It does have links about the book, ways to contact me. Most of the time with my new potential clients, we'll jump into a discovery call. And during that discovery call, I'm going to pad my success. And what I mean by that is I'm going to ask them questions, and I'm going to make sure that they align with somebody that I've helped before, so that I know I can help them. So by the time
Okay.
we're done with that discovery call, if I would go forward with them, I'm 95% accurate that I'm going to be able to help them in their situation. So I've asked the right questions, and I call it a big 10. There's 10 questions that I ask on the sheet. And by the time I get done with it, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got this one. Or this is not going to be a good match. And then I can maybe suggest where they might look for another match.
What percentage of the time do you turn somebody down that wants to work with you because they're not a match?
1 to 3%. Very infrequently is it somebody that says, I want to work with you. And I'm like, just don't know that this is going to be a good fit.
So you've asked those 10 questions and done a good job of qualifying them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, Paul, thank you so much. I have really enjoyed having our conversation about your business today. And for all of you listeners out there, keep thriving through.
Thank you.
What stands out most about Paul Moehring's story isn't just that he launched a business during a pandemic, it's how he refused to let circumstances define his outcome. When his marketing strategy disappeared overnight, he didn't freeze, he pivoted. He wrote the book he'd been postponing. He built systems. He created a framework that would help hundreds of business owners avoid the burnout trap he'd witnessed so many times. And that's the real lesson here. Sustainable success in consulting isn't about working harder or pushing through at all costs. It's about building balance into your business from the beginning. It's about asking the right questions so you work with clients you can actually help. It's about giving yourself permission to sleep on decisions before saying yes. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're caught in the feast or famine cycle, if you're wondering whether you can build a consulting practice that actually supports the life you want, Paul's Get Squared framework offers a different path forward. You can connect with Paul on LinkedIn or visit his website at spaulmoehring.com, and the link will be in the show notes. And if you found value in today's episode, please share it with another consultant who needs to hear this message. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the Thriving Through podcast so you don't miss future conversations. Until next time, keep thriving through.